Hi everyone, good
Good
morning.
morning.
Today we're going to be covering Hebrews 12, 1 through 3.
And since it's so short, I'll just read it for us first. Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. That's verse 1, I guess. But anyway, it starts off with the word therefore, and I was thinking about how this is a continuation from Hebrews 11, our DT yesterday. And if you remember yesterday's DT, it talked about the long line of heroes of faith, people who followed God, and just that wonderful picture of people who lived out a life of faith. But now it says therefore, and it's kind of implying that there's an entrustment that's been given to us. The ball is now in our court, and we need to do something about it. We've seen all these other people, how they live their lives for God, and our job isn't just to cheer them on or just acknowledge or appreciate what they've done, but it's almost like this baton is now passed to us, and God's asking,
All of them are passing it just to us.
yeah,
Run.
and how are we going to run this race? We're a part of the same race, right? Anyway, I thought Will was going to say something, but I'll just move on. I really appreciated the first question, the distinction between weights and sins, and I got to appreciate the idea of weights in a new way. In some ways, sin is a little easier to see, easier to kind of call out and deal with, but what are the weights? And those actually, this time I was thinking about it, those, especially for myself with 2021 church planting and being called to possibly move out again, I think weights are often the things that can be harder to lay aside, and they can hinder the race. And I had a new appreciation for what these weights are. For me, it could be, like this nice house tech view that I shared about, maybe the stability, the safety, and familiarity of Pittsburgh. Maybe it's the daily rhythms of our nuclear family. And the thing is, these are not necessarily bad things. Weights can be good things. It could be the comforts of the home. It could be, Abraham had to lay aside the weights of, this everything that was familiar about Haran, his hometown. And I think that's what makes it harder. It's the good things that get in the way. And also I was thinking about, but there's also other kinds of weights. Maybe there's a sense of inadequacy. Maybe there's past baggage. Maybe it's a fear of doing something you're not naturally good at or something new. And in some ways, those things aren't necessarily sins because, we're not willfully committing them. And sometimes we feel like they can't be helped. Maybe they are just a function of just how we are or just our environment, but we still need to try and wrestle to lay these things aside to run the race.
So I was thinking about a particular weight because this point hit me as well. And I was thinking about one of the biggest weights for me, I think, at my stage of life, and maybe for many of you guys too, is our desire for control and our preferences. Like I was thinking about this, these past few weeks have been pretty busy, a lot of changes, a lot of interruptions. And I was thinking, how much of my bandwidth goes into this battling of like internal complaining or grumbling when something doesn't go my way or the way I planned it? I feel like I didn't get to nearly as many things as I wanted to this week. And yet the things that I was interrupted by, those are the interruptions that perhaps God sent my way, that I needed to just faithfully attend to. But I realized that, man, one of the things that really taxed my bandwidth, where it was just non-productive at all, was just this whole weight of like wanting my own control and preferences and be like, I wish it was this way, or I wish it was this way, or why can't it have been this way? And like, if I just kind of let go of all of that, I realized things would have been much smoother and I could have, done what I needed to do faster, and then maybe that would have given me more time to get what I initially wanted to do done. And I was just thinking, the person who is able to run the race most freely then is someone who has a loose grip of control on their time, on their schedule, because they don't have these weights burdening them and slowing them down in the process of what they're doing.
So this idea of being slowed down in the race, I was or just also this idea that it's hard. This race is going to be hard. That's why it's calling us to run with endurance. What can we do to help that, or what can we do about that? Well, verse 2 starts off with looking to Jesus, and then verse 3 also says, consider him who endured from sinners, such hostility against himself. And I was thinking about what it looks like. It says, consider Jesus, look to Jesus. And when we run, when we're running a race, a runner only has one goal in mind, which is that finish line. We're not meant to look around, wonder where everyone else is, or what they're doing, or maybe why they're running a little slower than us. And we're not really concerned also as we're running about the accessories we're carrying or adjusting our jersey so that we look right or professional. No, actually our energies are invested in finishing the race well. And so I was imagining this race, just with this race imagery, what's at the finish line as we're running. And at the end of the race, we see Jesus. And I felt like this was like a split picture. There's on one for one picture of Jesus is this glorious picture. He's seated at the right hand of the throne of God, and he's probably clothed in white, and he's cheering us on. He's so radiant and happy that we're running with him, and there is a reward at the end that we can look to. But it also says, in verses 2 and 3, despising the shame, consider him who endured from sinners such hostility against himself. And I was reminded the other side of the split picture is that Jesus was also on the cross. He hung on the cross. He was crucified. And that reminded me that Jesus isn't asking us to do anything he himself didn't already endure. He gave his all for us. And I think sometimes when we're called to run this race, we'll talk about, it's going to be hard, and we're called to take a step of faith. And sometimes we can ask, is this asking too much of me? Is this demanding too much of me? Is this, taking too much of my time? Does it really have to be this way? But when we look to Jesus and we focus on Jesus and we think about what was given up for us, I think it's very clarifying.
Mm-hmm. Looking at verse 2, also looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith, says, for the joy that was set before him. And I was just reflecting on this. There was joy before him. I mean, what was immediately before Jesus was the cross, was the suffering that he would have to endure. But what was ultimately before him was joy, right? It was the joy that he would be resurrected, the joy he would be reconnected to the Father, the joy that his death would bring on the salvation possibility for everyone who has ever sinned, that people would be able to have restored relationship with him. I mean, Jesus was looking in the long term, and I think where we often kind of miss the mark is we're just so focused on the immediate, which is sometimes painful, which is sometimes hard. But then what's that future joy for us as believers? When it's crossing that finish line, it's looking towards heaven, our actual eternal home, thinking about, wow, I'm going to get to spend an eternity with Jesus, with God. And in that eternity, there's going to be no more pains, no more sorrows, no more tears. And then the other reality is that we're going to get to spend eternity with other brothers and sisters in Christ. And I think when we think of that bigger scale picture, it really makes that race of running this marathon of following Christ so much lighter and so much more joyful. So those are some thoughts that we had today, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Bye.